The job form said, medical cargo, climate sensitive, handle with moderate care. It said nothing about dragons. Reed Calloway had been driving the same interplanetary courier route for 4 years. Station Varath to the Outer Ring depots, back again, repeat until something broke, which, on his ship the Marginal Prophet, happened roughly every 6 weeks. Today nothing was broken. The cargo hold was sealed, the temperature controls were humming, and the docking approach to Station Varath was clear. By his own standards, the day was going remarkably well. Varath was a mid-sized transit hub, the kind of place where nothing important happened and everyone passing through was trying to get somewhere else. Reed liked it for exactly that reason. He landed in Bay 12, signed off on the approach log, and began the offload. The crates were heavy. He used the loader arm, which squealed in a way he kept meaning to get fixed. Grull was waiting at the bay door, short, scaled, wearing the same orange vest he always wore, holding a data pad like it had personally offended him. "You are 3 hours late," Grull said. "Fuel stop at Relay 9. The pump was slow." "The pump is always slow at Relay 9. "Then you already knew I'd be late," Reed said, and handed him the cargo manifest. Grull took it, pressed his thumb to the confirmation field, and handed it back without looking up. Reed loaded the signed copy into his jacket pocket and went to find something to eat. The food court on Varath's lower level was the size of a large warehouse and smelled like 6 different kinds of spice fighting for territory. Reed found a stall that sold pressed grain cakes, bought 2, and stood near the wall to eat them because all the seats were taken. Across the court, about 40 stalls down, a heating unit in a cooking stand had begun to smoke. Not dramatically, just a thin grey thread rising from the back of the unit. The vendor hadn't noticed yet. The people nearby were starting to shift uncomfortably. Reed finished his first grain cake, looked at the smoke, looked at the vendor still busy with customers, and walked over. He wasn't thinking about it as a decision. He pulled off his jacket, reached around the back of the unit, pressed the jacket against the heat vent where the short was happening, held it there for about 8 seconds, and the smoke stopped. He shook the jacket out, checked it, minor scorch mark on the left sleeve, and put it back on. "Your heating coil is arcing," he told the vendor. "You'll want to get that looked at before your next shift." The vendor stared at him. Reed picked up the second grain cake from where he'd set it on a nearby ledge and walked back toward the bay. He didn't notice the being standing near the pillar to his left. She was tall, nearly 7 feet, with dark armor plating across her shoulders that wasn't armor at all but her own natural hide, layered and ridged like the bark of an old tree. Her eyes were deep amber. Her jaw was structured in a way that made her look permanently like she was calculating distances. Her name was Sova, and she was Dravel, and she had been standing in that food court for 20 minutes waiting for nothing in particular when a human in a worn jacket had walked through a minor fire hazard like it was a door he was holding open for someone. She did not speak to him. She did not understand what she was feeling. The Dravel had a word for it, an old word from their warrior texts that described the recognition of something the body understood before the mind caught up. She had read that word in books. She had assumed it was metaphor. She stood very still and watched Reed Calloway disappear into the docking corridor. Then she walked to the transit desk and asked for a docking pass for the adjacent bay. Back on the Marginal Prophet, Reed filed his delivery confirmation, updated his route log, and ate the second grain cake while reviewing his next pickup. Raw alloy cores from an orbital refinery about 4 hours out. Standard job. He stretched, checked the cargo hold seals were back to empty hold status, and started his pre-launch sequence. As he was pulling out of Bay 12, he glanced through the side viewport and noticed a ship in the bay beside his large, dark hold with markings he didn't recognize at first. Then he did. Dravel registration marks, old design but maintained well. Someone had landed it in the last 15 minutes. A figure was standing outside it in the docking bay, tall, dark-plated shoulders. She was looking directly at his ship. Reed raised a hand in a vague wave. The figure did not wave back. He shrugged, turned back to his controls, and completed the launch sequence. The marginal prophet rose out of Bay 12, cleared the station's outer traffic lane, and set heading for the orbital refinery. 4 minutes later, a second ship lifted off from Varath. It took the same heading. Reed didn't know that yet. He was updating his fuel log and thinking about whether the loader arm squeal was a bearing issue or something deeper, probably a bearing. Bearings were cheaper. The stars outside were the same stars they always were. The route was the same route. He turned on the background audio feed, some low-tempo music from a station out of the Eastern Relay Network, and settled into the pilot's seat. It was, by all available evidence, a completely ordinary day. The orbital refinery was called Depot Helsin. It hung above a pale brown gas giant like a fishing hook someone had dropped and forgotten about. Reed had docked there 11 times. The crew changed every few months, but the smell never did. Raw metal and recycled air, and something chemical he had never identified and had stopped trying to. He was halfway through his approach vector when he saw it. Dark hull, Dravel registration marks, docked in Bay 7. The same ship. He sat with that for a moment, then he opened his comm to Neera. "I think someone is following me," he said. Neera's voice came back flat and tired, the way it always did when she was managing 4 other drivers and a manifest error somewhere. "What kind of someone?" "Dravel, big ship. It was at Varath when I left, and it's here now." "Did they do anything to you?" "No." "Did they threaten you?" "No." "Did they communicate with you in any way?" "No, there was someone standing outside it at Varath, and she looked at me." A pause. "Reed, sometimes people look at things." "She looked directly at my ship the whole time I was departing." "File a non-emergency transit inquiry if you're concerned. I've got a reroute issue on the Bellin cargo, and I need both hands." The comm clicked off. Reed filed the inquiry. The Compact Transit Authority responded in 40 minutes with a message informing him that the Dravel vessel in question was traveling within legal corridor lanes and he had no grounds for complaint. He read it twice. Then he went and got his alloy cores. The pickup was in Bay 4. A Vornak foreman named Stas walked him through the cargo count, 16 core units, each the size of a small refrigerator, vacuum-sealed and stacked on a magnetic pallet. Reed checked the weight distribution on his hold, adjusted 2 of the units, and signed for it. He was walking back through the refinery's main corridor when he heard the argument. 2 groups had stopped in the wide passage near the intake doors. On the left, a delegation of Sethian traders, all thin and very tall, carrying documents. On the right, 2 Borak haulers, broad-shouldered and clearly unhappy, standing in front of a cargo stack that apparently wasn't going anywhere. The argument was loud enough that refinery workers had stopped to watch from the upper walkway. Stas had appeared at the edge of the scene and was looking like he very much did not want to get involved. Reed's route back to Bay 4 went directly through the middle of it. He considered going around. The only other route was back through the intake processing hall, which added 10 minutes, and he wanted to get off Helsin before the refinery's shift change window clogged the departure lanes. He walked through. "Excuse me," he said to the nearest Sethian, who shifted sideways. He stepped between the 2 groups, edged past the disputed cargo stack, and paused because one of the Borak haulers was standing right at the narrow point. "Sorry," Reed said, "are these yours?" The hauler looked down at him. They were loaded onto the wrong ship. The Sethians are claiming ownership. Reed looked at the crates. They had 2 different manifest tags on them, overlapping, clearly a processing error. He looked at the Sethian delegation. He looked back at the hauler. "Both tags have today's date," he said. "Intake processing probably logged them twice when the scanner flagged a weight discrepancy. You'd both have a claim. The refinery arbitration desk is on level 2. They can pull the original intake timestamp in about 15 minutes and it'll tell you who was first in the system." He stepped the rest of the way through. "Have a good one." He kept walking. Behind him, the noise of the argument had stopped. Stas caught up to him near the bay entrance. How did you do that? Do what? They've been at it for 40 minutes. 3 of my crew tried to get them to arbitration. Neither side would move. Reed thought about it. I don't know, I just told them where to go. He boarded the marginal prophet, secured the hold, and launched before the shift change window. At that moment, in a corridor on the refinery's upper level, Sova stood at a viewport. She had watched the entire exchange from above. She had been heading to the intake hall when the argument below caught her attention, and then Reed had walked through it like someone walking through a bead curtain. Her hand, she noticed, had closed around the railing hard enough to leave small indentations. She went back to her ship. She pulled out her personal long-range comm and opened a channel she rarely used, a private line to an older frequency, encrypted, known only to a small number of people. One of them was Council Aura. Aura answered on the third signal. His voice was measured, the way it had been for the 60-odd years she had known him. She told him what she had seen, the fire at Varath, the argument at Helsin, the way the human had moved through both without adjusting anything about himself, no armor, no rank, no calculation, just motion and plain words. She told him what she was feeling, using the old word. Aura did not respond immediately. When he did, his voice was still measured, but something underneath it had changed slightly. Do not act on it yet, he said. Observe, be certain. I am already certain, she said. Then be more certain, he said, and Sova, do not lose sight of him. She closed the channel. In the dark of her ship's observation bay, she watched the marginal prophet's running lights move steadily along its heading, small and orange and unhurried, like something that didn't know it was being watched. She set her ship to follow. Grell called at an inconvenient time. Reed was under the loader arm with a wrench, trying to fix the squeal, and the comm chimed 4 times before he gave up and answered it with grease on his ear. You are in danger, Grell said. His voice was 2 full tones higher than normal. From the loader arm, maybe. I am being serious. There are rumors on Varath. People saw the Dravel ship follow you out of the bay. Someone on Helsin filed a transit observation log. The same ship was there and left on the same heading as you. Reed. A pause, long enough to be uncomfortable. The Dravel do not follow people. She hasn't done anything. That is not the point. The point is she is doing it at all. Reed heard Grell set something down heavily. I am going to tell you something from the historical record, and I need you to take it seriously. Okay. The last time a Dravel was recorded following someone who was not Dravel, and I am reading this from the Compact's cultural archive right now, the resulting situation ended with either a war, a religious movement, or both. The record is unclear on the order. Reed sat up and hit his head on the loader arm. It was probably a misunderstanding. Wars and religious movements usually are. Grell's voice dropped. Please be careful. Reed thanked him, closed the comm, and pressed his palm against the top of his head where the arm had caught him. He thought about the figure at the docking bay on Varath, the same ship at Helsin, the steady running lights he had noticed twice in his rear sensors, always at the same following distance. He decided he would deal with it directly. His next stop was Waystation Cora, a small restandry fuel point on the edge of the transit lane, quiet enough that the docking master knew everyone by name. Reed landed in Bay 2, logged his stop as a fuel and maintenance hold, and waited. 22 minutes later, a dark-hulled ship set down in Bay 3. Reed walked out of his docking bay and stood in the corridor between the 2 bays. He waited. When the Dravel ship's ramp descended and Sova came down it, she stopped at the bottom and looked at him without surprise, as though she had expected this. You knew I'd come out, Reed said. You are the kind of person who comes out, she said. Her voice was low and even. Her common tongue was precise, slightly formal, the kind that came from learning it from texts rather than conversation. Are you going to tell me why you're following me? Reed asked. Something moved across her face, not quite discomfort, but adjacent to it. She was quiet for a moment. "I am Dravel," she said, as if that explained something. Then, when his expression suggested it didn't, "We have an instinct, very old. It is connected to our warrior lineage. It activates when we are in proximity to someone the instinct judges to be." She stopped. "There is no good translation. The closest is worthy of standing beside." Reed considered that, "And your instinct thinks that's me?" "Yes. Why?" "I don't know," she said, and it clearly cost her something to admit it. Reed nodded slowly. "That sounds like it would be frustrating." "It is extremely frustrating. Do you want to get something to drink while you figure it out? Cora has a decent commissary." She looked at him for a long moment. The amber eyes were unreadable. "Yes," she said. The commissary was mostly empty, a few refueling crew at one table, a Sethian traveling alone near the back window. Reed got 2 cups of something hot that the menu called spiced grain tea without being more specific. He set one in front of Sova. She looked at it, then she picked it up. He told her about his job. The route, the clients, the loader arm that squealed, the fuel stop at Relay 9 that was always slow. She listened without interrupting, which he appreciated. She told him about the Dravel bonding instinct in the same tone someone uses to describe a medical condition, clinical, slightly distant, like she was reporting on someone else. The instinct was ancient, she said. It had shaped their warrior culture for centuries. It was involuntary and irreversible once triggered. The Circle, the Dravel governing body of elders, considered it sacred. "Has it happened to you before?" Reed asked. "No, it has not happened to any Dravel with a non-Dravel individual in 400 years. And you think it's definitely happening now?" "I am certain it is happening now." He turned his cup in his hands. "I put out a small fire with my jacket." "I know. And I walked through an argument at Helsin." "I know. I didn't do anything special." Sova set her cup down carefully. She looked at him with an expression that was very precise. "That," she said, "is a significant part of what triggered it." Reed didn't have an answer for that, so he finished his tea. He did not notice, 2 tables away, a Vornak traveler discreetly recording a message to a contact on Varath that said, "The Dravel is sitting with the human. They appear to be having a normal conversation. Please advise if this changes anything, because I genuinely do not know how to categorize what I am looking at." 4 hours later, Council Aura, having spoken again with Sova after she boarded her ship, made a second call. This one went to a line he rarely used. Admiral Dren picked up on the first signal. Aura's voice was calm. "There is a human courier on transit route 7 out of Varath. His name is Reed Calloway." A pause. "I think you should know about him." Admiral Dren did not like being told she should know about things. She considered it an implication that she had not already known them. "Send me his route," she said. The compact inspection vessel came out of transit drop about 60,000 kilometers ahead of Reed's bow. It was called the Darrant, and it was 3 times the length of the Marginal Prophet, and it broadcast on the Priority Hailing Channel, which Reed had not heard used in actual practice before. "Marginal Prophet, this is Compact Fleet Vessel Darrant. Hold your current position for a compliance inspection." Reed let out a long breath, pulled back on the throttle, and calmed nearer. "I'm going to be late on the Corritabesson run." "How late?" "Unknown. I'm being boarded by a compact inspection ship." A pause. "What did you do?" "Nothing." "Reed." "I genuinely did nothing. I think it's about the Dravel situation." "The what situation?" He closed the comm because the Darrant was already matching his speed and the docking corridor was extending. He straightened his jacket, the one with the scorch mark on the sleeve, and went to open the cargo bay. Admiral Dren was not what he expected an admiral to look like, and then immediately he felt vaguely embarrassed for having expectations about what an admiral would look like. She was Lethian, a species with pale gray skin and very dark eyes, roughly human height, and a very specific kind of posture that communicated clearly that she found her surroundings insufficient. She came aboard with 4 crew in formal uniforms and looked around the interior of the marginal prophet with an expression she was trying to keep neutral and not quite managing. "You can sit down if you want," Reed said. "The chair on the right squeaks. The one on the left is fine." She did not sit. "Mr. Calloway, you are registered as an independent courier operating under far-reach logistics, route clearance level 4, no outstanding violations." She looked at him. "You also appear to have acquired a Dravel escort." "She's not an escort, she's just following me." "That distinction does not meaningfully reduce my concern." Dren folded her hands behind her back. "What arrangement have you made with the Dravel Circle?" "None." "What service did you provide to the warrior following you?" "We had tea." Dren stared at him. "Before the tea, I put out a small fire at Varath with my jacket, and I gave some directions to 2 groups arguing at Helsin." "That is all." "That is everything. I've been making deliveries. I had a pickup at Helsin, a stop at Korra, and I'm trying to get to Besson before the cargo window closes." Dren studied him for a long moment, the way someone studies a form that has filled out its own fields incorrectly but technically hasn't made any errors. "Mr. Calloway, the Dravel bonding instinct is documented in compact cultural law as a matter of significant historical consequence. The last activation on record ended in a war or a religious movement," Reed said. "I've been told." "Both," Dren said. "It was both." She exhaled through her nose. "I am trying to determine whether you represent a destabilizing factor in this transit corridor." "I'm a delivery driver." "That is what makes this difficult." The marginal prophet's docking alert chimed. Both of them looked at the secondary bay door. Someone had docked without requesting permission. Sova came through the connector corridor and into Reed's ship like she owned the space she was walking through. She stopped when she saw Dren. Dren stopped when she saw Sova. They looked at each other with the particular expression of 2 people who have both read about the other person in reports and are now having to reconcile those reports with the actual situation. "Admiral," Sova said. "Warrior Sova," Dren's voice was precise. "You are aware that your actions have prompted a formal inquiry." "I am aware that my actions have prompted an inconvenience to an admiral who has filed the inconvenience as an inquiry," Sova said. "Reed Calloway is under Dravel observation. The Compact does not have jurisdiction over that process." "The Compact has jurisdiction over." "Show me the clause," Sova said. There was a silence. Dren did not show her the clause because there was no clause. The Compact's legal framework had, 400 years ago, quietly agreed not to write clauses about Dravel bonding because the alternative was worse. "I will be monitoring this situation," Dren said. "You are welcome to do so from your own ship," Sova replied. Dren looked at Reed one more time. He gave her the same small nod he had given Grull at every cargo handoff for 4 years, polite, simple, slightly tired. She turned and led her crew back through the connector to the Darrant. The docking corridor retracted. The Darrant remained on the same heading as the marginal prophet. So now there were 2 ships following him. Reed sat in the squeaky chair and looked at the ceiling. "Do you think she's going to be there at every stop?" "Possibly," Sova said. She found a section of wall to lean against, crossed her arms, and was quiet in the comfortable way of someone who had spent a great deal of time in silent observation. "Neera is going to have questions," Reed said. "Who is Neera?" "My dispatcher. She's already annoyed about the Besson delay." He looked at the comm. "I'm going to tell her I now have 2 alien ships following me." Sova said nothing. He opened the comm. "Neera, update on the delay situation." "Go ahead." "I now have 2 alien ships following me, a Dravel warship and a compact inspection vessel. Also, an elderly alien diplomat is apparently coming via long-range shuttle. Besson is looking less likely." A very long silence. "I'll reroute the package," Neera said, and closed the comm. Reed leaned back in the chair. It squeaked. Somewhere outside, Aura's shuttle was 4 hours out. The diplomatic station was called Outpost Terran. It had a hearing room designed for 12. They brought in extra chairs for 22. Then someone from the Dravel Circle sent word that Council Aura was attending in person, and they rearranged the entire room and brought in a third table. Reed was given a seat at the front. He had found in the back of his ship's storage locker a jacket that was slightly newer than the one with the scorch mark. He wore that one. Sova had looked at him when he came out of the locker and said nothing, which he had decided to interpret as approval. The hearing room held 7 species representatives, 4 legal observers, Admiral Dren in her formal uniform, Council Aura at the end of the long table, and Sova standing with her arms crossed because she had declined to sit and no one had pressed the point. At the front of the room, behind a thin transparent barrier, a compact hearing officer named Rost had the kind of expression that said he had been in difficult meetings before, but this was a new category of difficult. Hearing Officer Rost opened with a formal statement. The purpose of this inquiry was to establish the facts of the situation regarding compact citizen Reed Calloway and the reported activation of a Dravel bonding response, to determine whether any compact law had been violated, and to assess what, if any, action the compact should take. Then he asked if anyone had anything to add before the formal statements began. Grull, who had taken a transit shuttle to Terran purely out of anxiety, raised his hand from the back row. Rost looked at him. Grull lowered his hand. Dren went first. Her statement was detailed and organized. The core argument: this situation had no legal precedent under compact framework. A bonded Dravel warrior attached to a human civilian of no political standing created an undefined protective arrangement operating inside compact transit corridors, and the compact needed clarity on how to treat that arrangement going forward. She was not, she stated carefully, arguing against Reed or the Dravel. She was arguing for clear rules, the thing she had built her career on. An Orthan representative argued that the whole situation was culturally sensitive, and the compact should stay entirely out of it. A Sethian representative argued that the compact couldn't just opt out of a situation that had already affected 2 transit hubs and a way station. Then they asked Reed to speak. He had not prepared remarks. He sat forward and said, "I want to be honest, I don't think I did anything significant. I put out a small fire and I answered a question in a corridor. I've been trying to make my deliveries. As for Sova," he paused, glanced at her, "I don't want her to feel obligated on my account. She doesn't owe me anything because of an instinct she didn't choose." The room was quiet. Sova, who had not moved for the entire hearing, was looking at him. Her expression was something Reed couldn't read, but 3 of the 7 representatives noticed it, and 2 of them quietly wrote something in their notes. Aura spoke last. He had not spoken once during the entire proceeding. He had sat at the end of the table and listened with his hands folded and his eyes moving slowly from speaker to speaker, the way someone listens when they already know most of what is going to be said. When he spoke, his voice was unhurried. He said the Dravel bonding instinct was not a thing the Circle had ever been able to manufacture, suppress, or predict. It had not been activated in 400 years. The Circle had been consulted. The Circle had reached a determination. He paused here. "What Warrior Sova is experiencing is genuine," he said. "The Circle will not interfere with it. We consider it a matter of cultural and historical significance." He looked along the table. "We advise the compact to do the same." Hearing Officer Rost asked whether the Dravel Circle considered this a matter of formal claim over Reed Calloway as a protected individual. Aura considered the question. "We consider it a matter of natural outcome," he said. "The same way a mountain does not formally claim the weather that forms around it. The weather simply forms." Rost wrote something down. He looked like a man who had run out of categories. The hearing concluded with no action taken because there was nothing legal to act on. Reed was free to continue his route. Sova was free to follow if she chose. The compact would note the situation in its ongoing cultural records. Admiral Dren was free to monitor. Dren looked like she wanted to say something about monitoring. She didn't. In the corridor outside the hearing room, after everyone had filed out, Sova fell into step beside Reed. They walked without talking until they reached a window that looked out onto the docking area. Their ships were both visible, and behind them, the Darrant. "Where is your next delivery?" she asked. He pulled up his route on his wrist display. "Small colony on the frontier edge, agricultural equipment, 2-day run from here." She was quiet, then she said, "I will follow at a respectful distance. I will not interfere with your work." He considered it, or, he said, "You could just travel with me. I have a spare bunk. It's smaller than whatever you have on your ship, but it doesn't squeak. That's the chair in the cockpit that squeaks, not the bunk." She looked at him. "You've been eating alone and sleeping on a ship designed for 6, by yourself, for almost 2 weeks, he said. "That sounds worse." Something shifted in her face, not the warrior expression she had worn through the entire hearing, something quieter and much older. "I will bring my own blanket," she said. Behind them, from somewhere in the hearing room corridor, they heard Grell making a noise that sounded like a small animal discovering it was in the wrong place. Reed turned and called back, "She's taking the spare bunk, Grell." A long silence. "Then I need to sit down." "Use the chair on the left," Reed said. "The one on the right squeaks." 3 weeks after the hearing at Outpost Terran, something had changed along Transit Route 7, and Reed could not figure out what. The docking queues were shorter, not by much, but consistently. At every station he'd stopped at since Sova had moved onto the marginal profit, the bay cleared faster, the paperwork processed quicker, and twice, freight forwarders who had kept him waiting for upward of an hour in previous months had been standing ready at the dock when he landed. He mentioned it to Sova on the second week. She was in the co-pilot's seat doing maintenance on something from her personal kit, a small calibration tool she cleaned methodically and without looking at her hands. She did not look up when he mentioned it. "It is possible," she said, "that people are being more efficient." "Why now?" She was quiet for a moment. "Because I am visible in your docking bay interactions." He thought about that. "They're moving faster because there's a Dravel warrior standing behind me." "Standing beside you," she said, with a precision that was light but present. "But yes." He decided he didn't know how to feel about that, and filed it under weird, along with the rest of the past month. Grohl called again, this time with something closer to excitement than panic. He had apparently told the story at his station's evening shift change, and the reaction had been, in his words, unprecedented interest. He wanted to know if Reed was planning to write anything down. Reed said he was a delivery driver, not a writer. Grohl said that was a waste. Reed thanked him and closed the comm. The agricultural equipment delivery went without incident. The colony on the frontier edge was small and dusty and warm, and the people there were the kind of tired that comes from building something from nothing. The cargo, irrigation fittings, soil aerators, 3 compact planting units, was exactly what they had been waiting on. The colony's logistics laid, a weathered woman named Pell signed the manifest and looked at Reed, and then looked at Sova standing at the base of the ramp, and then looked back at Reed. "Is that a Dravel warrior standing next to your ship?" she asked. "She travels with me," Reed said. Pell looked at him for a moment. "Are you famous?" "No," he said. She seemed to accept this, took her copy of the manifest, and walked back toward her settlement. Sova boarded the ramp and Reed followed. The formal message from the Dravel Circle arrived 4 days later. It came on an encrypted channel, flagged as a cultural diplomatic communication, and it was addressed specifically to Reed Calloway, which his comm system flagged twice because it had never received diplomatic mail before. He read it once. He read it again. He handed the display to Sova. "What is a notification of recognized accompaniment?" he asked. "It is a formal designation," she said, reading it. "It means the Circle has officially acknowledged that you are under Dravel accompaniment. The last one issued to a non-Dravel individual was 400 years ago." "Roughly." What does it mean practically? She set the display down. It means that if any person or entity causes you serious harm, the matter becomes a concern of the Dravel Circle. And how do they address concerns? Thoroughly, she said. He decided not to ask further. That evening they were between stops, coasting on an easy heading with 4 hours before the next fuel waypoint. Reed was at the small table in the cargo-level living area with a cup of tea, updating his route log. Sova came down from the upper deck, where she had taken to spending time in the evenings. She sat across from him. She had her blanket over her shoulders the way a person wears one when they have decided comfort is acceptable. He kept working on the log. She didn't say anything. It was the kind of silence that didn't require filling. After a while she said, I have been trying to find the right way to explain what I saw at Varath when I first noticed you. Reed looked up. The Dravel instinct responds to presence, she said. Not strength, not rank, not performance, just what a being is in the moment it does not know it is being seen. I have met warriors, soldiers, leaders. I have been in rooms with people who were trying very hard to be remarkable. She paused. You were trying to catch a shuttle on time and you stopped to put out a fire with your jacket. It was a small fire. You did not evaluate it first, she said. You did not calculate risk. You just moved. She looked at her hands. The Dravel have a concept, a being that acts rightly without needing to decide to. We consider it very rare. We consider it the truest form of character. She looked up at him. You do it constantly and you have no idea. Reed was quiet for a moment. I'm about average, he said. Among my own people, I mean that. I'm not being humble. There are people doing this job and 100 other jobs who do exactly the same things. Sova nodded slowly. I know, she said. Aura said the same thing. He found it very concerning. Reed almost laughed. Why concerning? Because you're average, she said, and you're like this. He looked at his tea. He thought about that. The marginal prophet moved through the dark and quiet of open space, its running lights the same small orange glow they had always been, carrying a delivery driver and an ancient warrior toward the next stop on an ordinary route. It was not, by any available evidence, a remarkable ship. But it had 2 more ships, shadowing it from a respectful distance, a formal diplomatic designation on file with an alien civilization, and a growing reputation along Transit Route 7 that no one could explain and everyone had started to mention. The Galactic Compact would spend the next decade revising its entry on humanity, specifically the section titled Average Individual Threat Assessment. No one could agree on how high to set the new number. They kept the old footnote, though. It read, they do not appear to notice what they are doing. This may be the most relevant data point.